Hi everyone, my name's Katie. This is a nice rare video of me with my hair down straight after work, so I hope you appreciate it. It's a bit of a mess, so I do apologise about that. Today I'm going to chat about what happened to me over the weekend. So my previous videos have both been 5 and 6 weeks pregnant and how I've been feeling and just little things I've been chatting about during that time. And unfortunately on Friday what happened is that I noticed some bleeding happen in the morning. Unfortunately I was at work at the time, so I had to rush from work and go to an early pregnancy clinic, which is in one of my local hospitals. I phoned the GP first, who needed to make the referral. Unfortunately it wasn't a walk-in, so I did need the referral through the GP, but they organised that really quickly. So I managed to get to the clinic and they took a scan of my tummy, and I then had to have a scan of my stomach on a full bladder, and the sonographer noticed a few things that she thought were just little anomalies. So she then took a probe, and this is through the vagina, and she was able to see everything through this little sort of probe with some gel on it, which was cold, but it only went through about sort of up that far. It wasn't, for those of you who've had some cervical screening tests, nothing like that. So it only went so far in, and it was absolutely comfortable. It was no problem. And from there she saw that I had a beating heartbeat in a yolk sac, so I had the beginnings of an embryo, and the heart was still beating. It was still there, it was still attached to my cervical wall lining, but there was a lot of blood around it. And she measured the size of the sort of hemorrhage, she noted this down, and then she organised an appointment for 2 weeks to basically have another scan and give it a check. So that was that. So my husband was able to come and sit with me, and it was a long wait because it was the Friday before a bank holiday, so it was quite hectic. And because although you still needed a referral from your GP, it was it wasn't an appointment system. It was if you could turn up, you do. So once the referral had gone through, you had to go and sit and basically wait your turn. So the whole waiting time was about 2 hours, which is a long time when you are waiting to be told whether you are still pregnant or not, it was hard work, I'm not gonna lie. We kept ourselves distracted by watching silly series on his phone and trying to talk about all the other things other than why we were there. Thankfully it was in work time, so my toddler was in nursery, so we didn't have to worry about her, because that could have made life a lot more complicated. And yeah, so I went home. Basically the bleeding was a bit spotted from then, and I had quite a lot of cramps starting. They were very low tone ones, you get my drift. So they were very, they felt like mild period pain, basically, was the only way I could describe it, period cramps. I've never experienced very bad ones, but I have suffered from bad period pains since having my daughter. So I kind of took this with a pinch of salt. Also, with it being my second pregnancy, I was aware of my stomach muscles and your uterus. It can expand quite a lot in the first trimester, and so you can get cramping due to the stretching of it and the moving of all the muscles. So I decided that because we had the scan and everything seemed okay, I took the cramps with a pinch of salt. So I went to bed that night thinking everything was fine, and then the following morning, overnight the following morning, the cramps continued, but they didn't get any worse. So and I got a few spots of blood that I noticed coming out, but again, because it wasn't a huge gush, I didn't think of anything of it. And then the next day we had a wedding, because it was a Saturday and it was a gorgeous, beautiful day. So we got to the wedding, sat through the ceremony. It was about 29 degrees, so for England that's like the Sahara Desert. And we were all standing outside, ready to throw the confetti. We were there with confetti in our hands, and I picked up my daughter. And as I picked up my daughter, I felt this humongous pain in the base of my stomach, just in my sort of pelvic line. So I dropped her, or gave her to my husband straight away, and then about half a second later, I fainted on the floor. Outside in front of everyone, and from then I couldn't stand up without fainting. My blood pressure had plummeted quite severely, so I was rushed over. I was carried to a bench which was a couple of meters away from where I fainted, and I put my feet up, and it was chaos. It's the best way of describing it. It was the cramps were steadily getting worse, and I had no idea what to think or what to expect. Over the next 20 minutes the cramps got worse, but because I was lying down I didn't notice any more blood or anything like that, so I just focused on the pain. So thankfully we had friends around us who were able to look after my daughter at the time, who seemed totally nonplussed about the fact that I had just collapsed on the floor. So she was being distracted somewhere else, which was a godsend that I didn't have to worry about her as well. And then someone managed to grab a team of 3 of the St. John's ambulance crew, who were just milling around the area because there was another event going on in a field neighbouring where we were. And they came over and they did all my observations. So they checked my temperature, they checked my blood pressure, they put the little thing on my finger to check my oxygen saturation rate, and all these things that basically just to make sure I was still relatively healthy. While they were doing that, the cramps got worse, so they were getting pretty painful at this point, and they were sort of fluctuating between very painful and then it was easing off and then very painful. And I think at this point I knew what was happening. You know, the moment I fainted I had a good idea what it was. After about 5 minutes of cramps getting worse and worse, they finally and suddenly died down, and the moment they did, it's as if a fog had lifted. Like, my blood pressure went back up again, I was able to eat without vomiting, I was able to drink without vomiting it back up again. I didn't feel dizzy, the pain suddenly went. It was just such a huge relief. It was a huge relief. And then after about 5 minutes I stood up. Remember, I was in my full wedding attire by this point, including heels and a full face of makeup. I was able to make some wobbly steps to the toilet that was attached to where we've watched some friends get married. And as expected, a huge gush of blood came out, including loads of clots. What I could only describe as, you can tell the difference. I don't know if anyone's seen a clot come out while you're having a period, but you could tell the difference between a clot and the type of, I suppose they describe it tissue. When you sort of research it online, they do say that clots can come out and tissue can come out. And I suppose, and the only way of describing it is that this tissue is the embryo and the placenta that was starting to form. And at this point I was 7 weeks pregnant. And yeah, so that was me having a miscarriage. So that was a bit horrendous. I think on the day it was just relief that it stopped. I think the heartbreak happened when I was getting the cramps and they were starting to get worse. And I knew that technically these were mild contractions because my body was expelling this embryo, which it didn't want anymore. Whatever was wrong with it, my body knew it needed to go. So yeah, that's what happened. What was most gutting, I think, about the whole thing is that because we were given so much hope from the day before when we were told that the embryo was still alive, we could see the heart beating away, we had so much hope. We were given a little photograph of the little embryo and everything. That all happened on the Friday. And we started to get excited about being pregnant again, all over again. We were, because of the blood loss of the morning on the Friday, we automatically thought it was a miscarriage, and then we were told otherwise, and then this whole thing happened on the Saturday. And I think if it had just happened when it did and we weren't told otherwise, I think it may have been easier. I don't know. So after that, the cramping continued all through Saturday night, all through Sunday, and then into Monday morning. And it is now Tuesday afternoon, and I am still bleeding, but the cramping has stopped, which I'm grateful for because it's not fun. So what I did over the weekend after the miscarriage happened, I phoned the phone number that they gave me on the Friday, which then I could leave an answer phone message at the early pregnancy clinic just to explain the situation. Unfortunately, the ward clinic number that they gave me was only for sort of extreme emergencies, if you get really, really sudden blood loss, or you start to feel unwell and they query sepsis. So that wasn't any of me. It was thank God quite straightforward. So I phoned them again this morning and spoke to a lovely lady who actually booked me straight away into a clinic this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And I went up. Thankfully my husband came with me again, which was lovely, just for a bit of extra support. And exactly the same situation happened. It was like Groundhog Day. So we went in, waited for a little while. Thankfully not that long this time because we had an appointment. We laid down, had the scan on my lower abdomen, and then the internal scan with the probe, which then just proved that I'd had a miscarriage, really. There was, thankfully, silver linings. There were no signs of any debris or any parts of the embryo still left in there, and as far as the sonographer was concerned, the lining of my uterus was nice and thin, nice and clean, so it was as if I had a massive period, basically. My body had just rejected all of it, and that's what I'm experiencing now. I'm still bleeding, but it's becoming lighter. Some of the questions that we asked the nurse after, because what they did is that I had my time with the sonographer, and then the results were then analysed and written up, and then we were put into a room, a separate side room with tissues and nice pictures of flowers and all that kind of thing. And a nurse came in, a specialist midwife, who sat down and we just ploughed her with questions, really, like why did it happen, and is it likely to happen again, and was it anything that I did wrong, and all the question that you can imagine after having a miscarriage, especially because we were lucky enough to have a perfectly healthy pregnancy and a birth previously. It was a bit of a shock to our systems, the fact that we had a complication this time. We weren't expecting it. As I have been told and read many a time, 1 in 4 pregnancies end up in miscarriage, and that figure is probably lower than the actual number, because the pregnancies and miscarriages that they have on record are just the ones that turn up to hospitals and to early pregnancy clinics. That's not including the ones where no one tells anyone, and also the ones that you could fall pregnant and be 2 days pregnant and not even realise, and then just have a really heavy period and you just brush it off as a heavy period. So in some cases, you know, people have miscarriages and they don't even know. So that could drive, the sort of studies say that could drive the actual realistic number of miscarriages in the country up to 40%, which is a huge, that's, you know, 2/5 of all pregnancies could be miscarriages, which is crazy, really. It's a crazy fact. I suppose mentally feeling, as you can expect, a bit up and down. I was just relieved on Saturday to finally have the pain stop, because it was horrible. It was so bad. I'm really relieved that the cramping stopped, because that's not been any fun either. But on Sunday I woke up, and like anything, like any day after a horrible tragic event, it washes over you all of a sudden. The moment you wake up, you remember, and all the feelings, all the sorrow, all the sadness suddenly drenches over you again, and then you feel like again, really. So on the Sunday I went through the day feeling all the stages of grieving that you could have, really. I went through denial, I went through anger, I went through a mini depression. You know, I had all the stages then, apart from the acceptance. Even on Sunday after a full day, I still wasn't very good at accepting it. And by Monday I was starting to blame myself, of course. You know, I think that's quite common with people who have, with women who have miscarriages, that it's very easy to blame yourself and the thing that you did do, or the thing that you didn't do right, and I should have done more of this, or I should have drank less than that, or I should have eaten more of this particular specialist herb. It's so easy to get bogged down in the guilt. And I think today has been the hardest self-guilt trip out of all the days since the miscarriage on Saturday. I've had a lot of self-loathing this morning, to the point where I couldn't even look in the mirror at myself because I was just feeling a bit crap. But after speaking to the midwife at the clinic, she was amazing. She was really patient. She basically explained everything that I've read, but just in a real personal way, and because of that I finally wrenched myself out of that guilt trip, which I've been spiralling down since it happened on Saturday. Basically, I think what a lot of people in my situation would want to know is, are we able to conceive again? And of course the answer is yes, if you've had healthy pregnancies before, or even if you haven't and this is your first time trying, there is absolutely nothing to say that your next pregnancy will end up in miscarriage. It's just a fluke. The one solace that I take away from this is that there is a reason why it happened. there is a reason why this little embryo didn't survive. Something wasn't right about it, and although we saw the heartbeat, we don't know what was going on with all the other systems that make up a little tiny baby, a perfect little round perfect little baby. It could be that something to do with the brain wasn't developing properly, or even the skin, you know, anything. Although we saw the heartbeat, it doesn't mean that that little embryo wasn't you know, there wasn't something wrong with it in some way. And I'd rather know about it now than say in 6 months' time when we have a stillbirth and something happens, because I know that that tragic event happens more often than it should. So the only solace I really take is that it happened, and it happened for a reason. So the general advice now is that we have to leave it until I have a full cycle. So my next bleed after this one finishes will be my next period. So they encourage you to wait till your next period, and then your ovulation cycle will start after that. So they encourage you to do that just so you can basically get your body back to normal. There's a lot of pregnancy hormones that's still in my system. They should deplete in around 2 to 3 weeks, so I need to do another pregnancy test after that, which they gave me at the hospital. And if after 3 weeks I still have pregnancy hormones and the test says I'm positive, then that means there's a chance that there could still be little bits of the embryo still in my uterus, which means I need to go back up to the hospital. But the positive thing is that they do not think that's going to happen. It's just protocol that they have to make you do a pregnancy test after you've had a miscarriage, about 3 weeks after, just to make sure it's all still out. As far as us trying to conceive again, we will do as soon as we can, and as soon as we psychologically feel up for it again. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer to this question. Some people just take it with a pinch of salt and start straight away. Some people just take it as a sign to look after themselves for a little bit longer and add a few nice things in the meantime, like a holiday, or, you know, they get certain big events out of the way. One of the issues that we had is that we have family holidays coming up, which ironically landed perfectly around us announcing after the 12-week scan. But that's all changed now, but it doesn't matter, because it's just one of those things, and we can rearrange holidays. Doesn't matter. Also, it means I get to drink alcohol for a little bit longer. Yay! So I have a feeling this weekend I am probably just gonna have a martini or 5, because I can now. Right, so this is the end of my quite sad video, but I just thought I would keep you up to date with what's happened. If I get pregnant again, I will continue these videos the best I can, and I will share with you all the feelings and fears that I have, especially after having a miscarriage. And if you have any questions, please post them, but I'll be more than happy to respond to them. But yes, thank you for watching.